Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tina and I forgot to film an intro. This is the mid-year book freakout tag and I hope you enjoy.
Question 1. Best book you've read so far in 2020. So for the best book I read in 2020, I'm going with One Day in December by Josie Silver. So this book is about a girl who falls in love at first sight with this guy that she sees while she's in the bus, and he's sitting at a bus stop, and she tells her friend about it, and she's looking for him all throughout the year because she only saw him for a few seconds, but she knows what he looks like. She's looking for him actively over the next year. It turns out that he's her roommate's boyfriend. And this book takes place over a 10-year span while she comes to terms with the fact that yes, she's been actively searching for this guy and she's in love with him, and her friend knows all about this guy. Well, she can't have him anymore because he's her best friend slash roommate's boyfriend. This is not just a Christmas read. It takes place at different times of the year, but most of it does take place around the Christmas time. I read this book in one sitting back in January after I saw it being talked about a lot on BookTube, and I am definitely going to be reading this every December for the next few years, for sure. Question 2. Best sequel you've read so far in 2020. The best sequel I've read in 2020. What is the best sequel I've read in 2020? It's The Silvered Serpents by Roshni Chachki, the sequel to The Gilded Wolves. I don't actually have the physical copy with me because it comes out in September, but I was so lucky to be able to read an e-arc of it sent to me by the publisher on NetGalley, and I just have to say, this is the book I talk about most on my channel, here on BookTube, on Instagram, and on TikTok. And if you have not read this, please do yourselves a favor and pick it up. I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars, but as soon as I read the sequel, I had to bring this down to 1 star because the sequel is a million stars out of 5. And yes, this was one of my favorite books that I read in 2019. The sequel is the best book I've read this year, but since I talk about it too much as it is, I don't want to dive in too much more. This book follows a cast of characters in 1800s Paris. They're living in an alternate universe. They're able to create things using magic. So the creating of things, it's called forging. So you can forge things, whatever you want. You can forge a device that'll transport you. You can forge a device that'll make you see in the dark, or that comes in handy in whatever circumstance you're going. The cast of characters is my favorite cast of characters in any book, I think. I had multiple point of views in the book too. Just if you haven't picked this up, do yourself a favor. The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chachki. Question 3. New release you haven't yet read but really want to. There are 2 releases that came out this year that I haven't read but are at the top of my TBR, and they are Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare and Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. I keep hearing about this, but I don't actually know exactly what it's about. I just know Sarah J. Maas wrote it, so I am 100% down, and I'm surprised I haven't read it yet already. And then for Chain of Gold, it's the new book featuring Herondales and the Shadowhunter Chronicles, and Will Herondale is in this. As soon as I finish The Darkest Artifices, I have to pick this up. This one is just basically a continuation of The Infernal Devices. Takes place multiple years in the future. If you haven't read that, I'm not going to spoil anything, but basically that's what this is about. The 2 most anticipated books of 2020 for me, actually tied with The Silvered Serpents, but I've already read that one. I'm surprised I have not read these yet. I'll get to them eventually. Question 4. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. My most anticipated release for the second half of this year, by far, nothing will compare to this, is Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. The new Twilight book. Twilight in Edward's point of view. And I'm sorry, but I have a whole video on this on my channel. If you are interested in knowing more about it, if you aren't, up to date on it, or you want to know more of my thoughts. I've been waiting for this book since 2012. I think that's when it originally got announced. I'm so excited. I recently reread the Twilight Saga earlier this year. It's I reread all of them. I listened to them on audiobook, but oh my gosh, was I reminded of how much I love Edward. And I thought going in, I was kind of skeptical about how much I was going to love these books again. Just because, I'm older, I realize that I've heard the writing is shit. But that's not the case. The writing is beautiful. I love all of the characters the same, if not more, than when I originally read the series. Like, for example, I always loved Alice, but, like, I love Alice now. And, like, in the movies, I didn't even realize how Bella and Alice's relationship, you see it, but not as much as in the books. And then, like, Jacob is a lot more annoying in the books than in the movies. Like, he's a lot more childlike, which makes sense. I forget that they're like 14, 15, like 16, 17-year olds in this book. Because, like, you don't get that vibe when you're watching the movies, but I miss them. And that's why Midnight Sun is my most anticipated book of 2020. Question 5. The biggest disappointment. Welcome to my channel. We've talked about this book many times. My most disappointed book of 2020 that I've read, An Enchantment of Ravens. We talk about this, like I said, I've talked about this several times on my channel. I recommend this to people who are looking for like a fantasy read that's smaller, if they want to just test the waters. Maybe they haven't read A Court of Thorns and Roses and they want to try out YA fantasy, or they want to like find something similar to it. I would recommend Enchantment of Ravens. At the same time, this book was not for me. I did not like the writing style. It's very flowery, it's very nice, but it took me out of the story personally. I didn't really like any of the characters. Like, they were okay, like Rook, and I think her name is Isabel. They were okay, but like, I didn't connect with them very well. So overall, this was the most disappointing book of the year for me, just because I was expecting to like this a lot because it's hyped up. This story takes a weird turn. I don't know. I did not like it very much. But like I said, I do recommend this to people who like Fae and maybe are trying to get out of a reading slump. I don't unrecommend this. It just wasn't for me. Question 6. The biggest surprise. My biggest surprise of this year is not a single book, but a whole genre of books / format of reading books. So this year I got into new adult romance audiobooks, and they have completely changed my life. So I used to be the type of person that if I were listening to audiobooks, I would have to listen to them on 1x speed and like read along with it in the book, and 1x speed is a lot slower than how I read in my head, but for some reason I felt like I had to do it like this. Like, now that I realize like I don't need to do that, I've been reading a lot more audiobooks, and I always like to, like I said, like merge dragons or like play Subway Surfers or something while I'm doing it. So that's the biggest surprise of this year. Question 7. Favorite new author. I don't know if I have a new favorite author per se. Amanda Foody, who wrote Ace of Shades, is an author I guess I'm going to be keeping up with for the next few years while I read the rest of this series. Like I said, I read a lot of really good books, but not like new favorites. This is a pretty good, solid series. I don't have a new favorite author, but Amanda Foody is added to my keep up with this author list. Question 8. Newest fictional crush. I have 2. Both of these people are part of fantasy series, and it is Levi from Ace of Shades, talking about this again, and Bass from All the Stars and Teeth. I love both of these love interests. Question 9. Newest favorite character. It's a character from a sequel. I've read this book. I talk about this book all the time. I talked about this in this video. He's from the Gilded Wolves. His name is Enrique, and I loved him in The Gilded Wolves so much, but his character arc, him and Hypnos, their arcs from The Silver Serpents are just some of my favorite character arcs that I've ever read, like, of all time, especially Enrique. Enrique is such a complex, interesting character. I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't dive into it too much. I don't know, he's my little precious bean, has gone through so much, and I love him. My newest favorite character is Enrique. Question 10. A book that made you cry. Many books made me cry this year, but two of them really stick out. One of them is All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover, which I read earlier this year and I just loved. It's about this woman and her husband who have been married for a couple of years now. There's a lot of problems within the relationship, especially because the woman who really wants to have children is unable to, and she holds a resentment towards herself and to her husband because of it. It's a book that made me cry reading it. I cried like a million times reading this book. I cried from like page 5 all the way to like the end, like literally nonstop. I love this book so much. I highly recommend it. And It Ends With Us is my favorite Colleen Hoover novel, but All Your Perfects is definitely my second favorite novel by her. And the other book I just want to quickly talk about that made me cry this year so much is Breaking Dawn, the last book in the Twilight Saga. When I popped open this audiobook, I started crying, especially when I got closer to the second half of the book, when, spoiler alert, Bella turned into a vampire. And I just cried and cried and cried. There's just something about this series that I'll always rate 5 stars. I know I've heard there's a lot of problems with it, but that's a video for another day, and I love these books so much. Question 11. A book that made you really happy. I'd say every book I read this year made me happy. 3 of them made me extremely happy, and they're all from the same authors. Christina Lauren's 3 books that I've read this year are Twice in a Blue Moon, Roomies, and my favorite, Half Nightstand. I always find myself giggling and smirking and just smiling when I'm reading their books. So these are the 3 books that really made me extra happy this year. Question 12. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year? For this question, I'm not going by like beautiful because I'd probably say like Chain of Gold, but I'm going with Some Diary, I think that's how you pronounce it, by Zordella Cordova. I'm so sorry if I missay that. This book I got in my Owl Crate box for the month of May actually, so I recently got this. So according to Amazon, this is a new fantasy book with an epic tale of love and revenge, perfect for fans of Sabaa Tahir and Sarah J. Maas. I'm assuming that applies to the majority of us. Question 13. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? There's a lot. The first one is The Darkest Artifices by, of course, Cassandra Clare. I need to read Lord of Shadows and then Queen of Air and Darkness. I have to finish the Kiss of Deception series. I just have to read the last one. So The Beauty of Darkness. And finally, another one that I need to finish as soon as possible is the last one in the 3 Dark Crowns series, which is 5 Dark Fates. And finally, question 14. Favorite book community member. There's going to be a little slideshow that happens after this, so you can see all of the people that I recommend you go and watch on different platforms. I have some bookstagrammers, some book talkers, and some YouTubers who I really love. So that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more of me, I recently posted a Get Ready With Me /Q&A, and before that I posted my TBR video for the reading rush that's happening later this month. As soon as that starts, I am going to be vlogging my reading rush experience, and then before that I reacted to your unpopular bookish opinions. Or if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or Goodreads, that is going to be on the screen right now as I am talking. Again, thank you so very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye!